The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council building rose high above the purple plains of Zephyria. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in a circle, their faces showing worry and fear. The air buzzed with nervous energy as creatures with scales, fur, and metal skin whispered to each other in dozens of languages. Council Speaker Veltar stood at the center of the room. His blue skin glowed softly in the dim light, and his 4 eyes looked at each representative with concern. He had called this emergency meeting because of a problem that threatened to destroy the peace they had worked so hard to build. "Friends," Veltar began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "we face our greatest challenge in 3,000 years. The Zirathi Empire has grown too bold. They demand tribute from 12 peaceful worlds, and their new weapons are stronger than anything we have seen before." A small creature with green tentacles raised one of its many arms. "What can we do? The Zirathi have 50 million soldiers. Their war machines can destroy entire planets. We are diplomats, not warriors." Veltar nodded sadly. "This is true. We have always solved problems with words, not weapons. But the Zirathi no longer listen to words. They only understand force, and we do not have enough force to stop them." At the back of the room, a door opened with a soft hiss. A tall figure in a blue uniform walked in, looking confused and slightly out of place. Commander Jake Sullivan of the human exploration vessel, New Horizon, had arrived for what he thought would be a routine trade meeting. Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. He had been to the council before, but never during such a serious gathering. He carried a small bag filled with samples of human music, books, and snacks that the council always seemed to enjoy studying. "Excuse me," Jake said, raising his hand like a student in school. "I think I might be in the wrong place. I'm here to discuss trade agreements for coffee beans and chocolate." Several council members turned to look at him with interest. Ambassador Nixara, a tall being with silver skin and large black eyes, stood up from her seat. She had been studying humans for 20 years and knew more about them than any other species in the galaxy. "Commander Sullivan," she said, her voice smooth and musical, "you arrive at exactly the right time. We have been discussing the Zirathi problem, and we believe humanity might be able to help us." Jake laughed and shook his head. "I think you have the wrong species. Humans are pretty new to this whole space thing. We barely figured out how to travel between stars without blowing ourselves up. What could we possibly do about a military empire?" Veltar's eyes lit up with something that might have been hope. "That is exactly why we need you. Commander, may I ask you a question? What would humans do if a bigger, stronger group threatened to take everything you owned?" Jake thought for a moment, scratching his head. "Well, I guess we'd try to talk to them first. If that didn't work, we'd probably try to figure out what they really wanted and see if we could work something out. Maybe find a way to solve the problem that nobody else had thought of." The council members looked at each other with growing excitement. This was exactly what they had hoped to hear. "You see," Nixara explained, "most species in the galaxy react to threats in predictable ways. The strong fight back with force. The weak surrender or run away. But humans do something different. You find solutions that nobody expects." Jake still looked confused. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with the Zirathi?" Veltar stepped forward, his 4 eyes focused on Jake with intense interest. "Commander, we have been watching your species for several decades. Every time humans face a problem, they solve it in ways that surprise everyone. When your people first learned to fly, they crashed thousands of times, but never gave up. When you reached space, you sent musicians and poets along with your scientists. When you meet new species, you offer them food and friendship before discussing business." "That's just being polite," Jake said with a shrug. "No, Nixara said firmly. That is being human. And that is why we need you. The Council had been studying human behavior for years. They had watched humans turn enemies into friends, solve impossible problems with simple solutions, and stumble into success through pure stubbornness and creativity. While other species followed logical patterns, humans seemed to operate on a completely different level. What exactly are you asking us to do? Jake asked, though he had a feeling he wasn't going to like the answer. Veltar exchanged glances with the other council members before speaking. We are granting humanity full military autonomy to deal with the Zirithi Empire however you see fit. You have complete authority to negotiate, trade, fight, or find any other solution you think might work. Jake's eyes went wide. Wait, what? You want us to handle an entire military empire? We don't even have a real space navy. Our biggest ship has a crew of 300 people. That is perfect, Ixara said with what might have been a smile. The Zirithi expect either massive fleets or immediate surrender. They will not know what to do with a small group of humans who approach them with curiosity instead of fear. The vote was called immediately. 47 species voted in favor of the human solution, not because they thought humans were the strongest or smartest, but because they were the most unpredictable. In a galaxy where everyone followed the same basic rules of diplomacy and warfare, humans were the only species that consistently broke those rules and somehow made things work. As Jake left the council chamber with his new authority to handle an intergalactic crisis, he couldn't help but think that this was either the best or worst decision anyone had ever made. He had come to sell coffee beans and somehow ended up responsible for preventing a war. The council members watched him go, hoping that human unpredictability would once again find a solution where logic had failed. 3 days later, Jake Sullivan stood in the Oval Office, still trying to understand how a simple coffee trade mission had turned into saving the galaxy. President Lisa Carter sat behind her desk, reading the official report from the Galactic Council with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. So let me get this straight, President Carter said, looking up from the papers. An alien military empire with 50 million soldiers is threatening to destroy 12 peaceful worlds, and the entire Galactic Council wants us to handle it? Jake nodded. That's about right, ma'am. They seem to think we're good at solving problems. In unexpected ways. General Rick Martinez, a stocky man with graying hair and serious eyes, leaned forward in his chair. With respect, Mr. President, we're not equipped for this kind of operation. Our space fleet consists of 12 exploration ships and a handful of research vessels. We don't have battleships or plasma cannons. Admiral Susan Blake, the Navy's top officer, agreed. The Zirithi have weapons that can destroy planets. Our most advanced ship has sensors and communication equipment. This isn't exactly a fair fight. President Carter stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Washington skyline. What do we know about these Zirithi? What do they want? Director of Intelligence Paul Kennedy opened a thick folder. According to our sources, they're a warrior species that has been expanding their territory for centuries. They believe that strength equals worth, and they view peaceful species as weak and deserving of conquest. They want tribute from 12 worlds, but experts think this is just the beginning. What kind of tribute? The president asked. Food, raw materials, technology, and workers, Kennedy replied. Essentially, they want to turn these worlds into slave colonies. President Carter turned back to face the room. Well, we can't let that happen. What are our options? General Martinez spread out a star chart on the table. We could send our entire fleet, but that would be suicide. We could try to negotiate, but the Council says the Zirithi don't respond to traditional diplomacy. Or we could try to find allies and build a coalition. How long would that take? The president asked. Months, maybe years, Admiral Blake said. And we don't have that kind of time. The Zirithi are already moving their fleets into position. The room fell silent as everyone considered the impossible situation. Finally, President Carter made a decision that would change galactic history. "We'll send a small task force," she announced. "One ship with a crew of 200 people. Scientists, engineers, diplomats, and a few military personnel for protection." General Martinez looked shocked. "Ma'am, that's not enough people to fight a war." "Then we won't fight a war," the president said simply. "We'll do what humans do. Best, we'll figure out what these Zirithi really want and find a way to give it to them without anyone getting hurt." Within hours, the mission was being organized. Captain Amy Rodriguez was chosen to lead the expedition. She was a calm, experienced officer who had handled first contact situations with 3 different alien species. Her ship, the destroyer, Liberty Bell, would be retrofitted with the best communication equipment Earth could provide. The crew selection was typical of human missions. Instead of choosing only military personnel, they picked a diverse team of experts who might be useful in unexpected ways. Dr. Ben Torres, a marine biologist who studied dolphin communication, was brought on board because his work with animal languages might help with alien contact protocols. Engineer Lisa Murphy was selected because of her ability to understand and repair almost any kind of technology. Sergeant Tony Walsh, a demolitions expert, was included for security, though he seemed more interested in the ship's food supplies than in fighting aliens. The crew also included teachers, doctors, musicians, and even a chef who specialized in making food that different species could eat safely. It was exactly the kind of mixed group that military strategists would never choose for a war mission. As the Liberty Bell prepared to launch, the Zirithi were already intercepting human communications. In the command center of their massive battleship, Iron Fist, war leader Kraxon studied the intelligence reports with growing confusion. Kraxon was a tall, powerful being with dark red skin and 4 arms. He had won hundreds of battles and conquered dozens of worlds. He understood war, strategy, and the psychology of defeat. But he could not understand what the humans were planning. "They are sending 1 ship," reported his intelligence officer, a smaller Zirithi with yellow markings. 200 beings, mostly what they call scientists and engineers. Kraxon's eyes narrowed. This must be a trap. No species sends such a small force against an empire. They are either trying to insult us, or this is some kind of advanced psychological warfare. "Perhaps they have a superweapon," suggested another officer. "A device so powerful that they only need 1 ship to carry it." Kraxon nodded slowly. "That would make sense. We will watch them carefully and be ready for anything." Meanwhile, aboard the Liberty Bell, Captain Rodriguez was holding the mission briefing with her senior staff. The mood was serious, but not panicked. Humans had a long history of walking into impossible situations and somehow finding a way to make things work. "Our mission is simple," Captain Rodriguez explained. "We're going to meet with the Zirithi leadership and try to work out a peaceful solution. We're not going there to fight. We're going there to understand." Dr. Torres raised his hand. "What if they don't want to talk? What if they just attack us?" "Then we'll deal with that when it happens," the captain replied. "But let's not assume the worst. Maybe they're just scared or confused. Maybe they've been fighting for so long that they've forgotten how to do anything else." Sergeant Walsh looked up from his equipment checklist. "Should I prepare the defensive systems?" "Prepare everything," Captain Rodriguez said. "But remember, we're not invaders. We're visitors. We're going to treat the Zirithi the same way we'd treat any new neighbors. With respect, curiosity, and maybe a little bit of caution." The Liberty Bell launched from Earth's orbital station 3 days later. As it accelerated toward the edge of the solar system, the crew began their usual routines. Dr. Torres continued his research on communication. Patterns. Lisa Murphy studied the ship's systems and made improvements. The musicians practiced songs from different cultures, hoping that music might help bridge the gap between species. None of them realized that their casual, curious approach to an intergalactic crisis was about to turn the galaxy's most feared military empire upside down. The Liberty Bell dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Zerothy space, and immediately the crew realized they were not alone. Massive alien warships surrounded them, their dark metal hulls bristling with weapons that could destroy. A planet. Captain Rodriguez counted at least 50 vessels, each one 10 times larger than her ship. "Well," she said calmly, "I guess they know we're here." The communications officer, Lieutenant Brad Johnson, looked up from his console with nervous excitement. "Captain, we're receiving signals from the Zerothy fleet. They're demanding to know our intentions." "Tell them we're here to talk," Captain Rodriguez replied, "and maybe ask if they'd like to hear some music while we discuss things." War Leader Craxon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tiny human vessel with suspicion. The ship was smaller than his smallest fighter craft, and it showed no signs of weapons or shields. Either the humans were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "They say they want to talk," reported his communications officer, "and they are asking if we would like to hear ... music." Craxon's forearms tensed. Music? This is definitely psychological. Warfare. They are trying to confuse us before they attack. Aboard the Liberty Bell, Dr. Torres was studying the biological readings from the Zerothy ships. "Fascinating," he muttered, looking at the data scrolling across his screen. "Their life signs show extremely high stress levels. Heart rates, brain activity, hormone production, everything is elevated. Maybe they're nervous about meeting us," suggested Lisa Murphy, who was monitoring the alien technology around them. "I would be if I were them. They probably don't know what to expect from humans." Sergeant Walsh was in the cargo bay, unpacking his equipment. He had brought along some fireworks and flares, thinking they might be useful for signaling or celebrations, if the negotiations went well. He was also testing a new type of explosive that created colorful patterns in space, more of a science experiment than a weapon. "Sergeant," Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom, "we're going to start." With a friendship gesture, "Can you set up something impressive but harmless? Maybe those new flares you were working on?" Walsh grinned. "I've got just the thing, Captain. Give me 5 minutes to set it up." What Walsh didn't know was that his harmless demonstration was about to change the course of galactic history. He had been experimenting with a new type of flare that used exotic particles to create beautiful light shows. The flares were completely safe, but they had an unexpected side effect when used near certain types of asteroids. "Friendship display ready," Walsh reported. "Launching in 3.2.1. A colorful flares shot out from the Liberty Bell in a brilliant pattern, creating a spectacular light show against the dark space. The human crew watched with appreciation as the lights danced and swirled in complex patterns. But Walsh's flares contained particles that reacted with the rare metals in the nearby asteroid field. The reaction started small, just a few rocks glowing brighter than usual. Then the effect spread, causing a chain reaction that lit up the entire asteroid belt in a massive explosion of light and energy. The explosion was beautiful rather than destructive, but it was also enormous. The light show could be seen from 12 star systems, and the energy wave that followed destroyed 3 Zerothy scout ships that had been hiding in the asteroid's dot on the Zerothy flagship. Alarms began blaring. "Report!" Craxon shouted over the noise. "The humans have destroyed the asteroid field," his tactical officer reported. They used some kind of weapon that turned the rocks into bombs. 3 of our ships are gone. Kraxon stared at the massive light display with growing fear. Impossible. How can they control asteroids? What kind of technology is this? Aboard the Liberty Bell, Walsh was looking at his instruments with confusion. It wasn't supposed to happen, he said. I think the flares reacted with something in the asteroids. Should I report this as a malfunction? Captain Rodriguez was watching the Zirathi fleet through her view screen. The massive ships were backing away from the asteroid field, and there, weapons were powering up. I don't think they know it was an accident, she said. Lieutenant Johnson, open a channel to the Zirathi commander. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Rodriguez of the human vessel Liberty Bell. We apologize for the unexpected fireworks display. That was not intended as a weapons demonstration. The translator on the Zirathi flagship was having trouble with human idioms. Instead of fireworks display, it translated the message as preliminary weapons test. Instead of not intended, it came out as just the beginning. Kraxon heard the translation and felt his blood freeze. They are saying this was just a test? That they have more powerful weapons? Meanwhile, Dr. Torres was making an important discovery. While studying the Zirathi biological readings, he noticed something unusual about their brain patterns. Captain, he said, I think I know why the Zirathi are so aggressive. Look at these readings. He showed her the data on his screen. Their stress hormones are off the charts, but not from fear. It's coming from their communication systems. The frequency of their military radio signals is affecting their brain chemistry, making them more aggressive and less able to think clearly. You mean they're being driven crazy by their own radios? Captain Rodriguez asked. In simple terms, yes. They probably don't even realize it. They've been using these communication frequencies for so long that constant aggression feels normal to them. Captain Rodriguez had an idea. What if we broadcast something on a different frequency? Something that might help them calm down? Dr. Torres nodded enthusiastically. I've been studying whale songs and dolphin calls. They use specific frequencies to communicate emotions and intentions. If we could broadcast something similar, do it, the captain ordered. And while you're at it, add some of that jazz music the crew has been playing. Maybe some of those nature documentaries we brought for trade. The Liberty Bell began broadcasting a mix of whale songs, soft jazz, and David Attenborough's soothing voice describing the mating habits of penguins. The sounds traveled across space and reached the Zirathi fleet, where they had an immediate and unexpected effect. For the first time in centuries, Zirathi soldiers began to feel calm. The constant anger and aggression that had driven them to war started to fade. They found themselves listening to the strange sounds with curiosity instead of rage. What is happening to us? Asked a Zirathi gunner, his voice confused but peaceful. I do not know, replied his commander, but I no longer feel the need to destroy everything I see. On the flagship, war leader Kraxon was experiencing the same change. The constant pressure in his head was disappearing, replaced by a clarity of thought he had not felt since childhood. Sir, his communications officer said, the humans are broadcasting what they call cultural exchange materials. They appear to be educational programs about small flightless birds called penguins. Kraxon found himself genuinely interested in learning about penguins. Are they warriors? He asked. No, sir. They appear to be adorable creatures that slide on ice and take care of their young. For the first time in his military career, Kraxon smiled. Fascinating. Request more information about these penguins. As the human sound weapon continued to broadcast across the Zirathi fleet, something remarkable began to happen. Zirathi soldiers who had known only anger and violence for their entire lives suddenly found themselves questioning everything they had been taught. Commander Zixara, second in command of the Zirathi fleet, stood in her quarters listening to a jazz saxophone solo that was somehow more beautiful than any sound she had ever heard. For the first time in her 40 years of military service, she wondered if there might be better ways to solve problems than fighting. "Bridge to Commander Zixara," came a voice over the intercom. "War Leader Kraxon requests your presence immediately." Zixara walked to the bridge, noticing that her crew members seemed different somehow. They were still working at their stations, but their movements were calmer, more thoughtful. Several were actually smiling, which was something she had never seen during military operations. "Commander," Kraxon said as she approached, "I need your opinion on something. These humans have sent us educational materials about creatures called penguins. I am trying to determine if they are showing us their military tactics or if they are trying to share knowledge for peaceful purposes." Zixara looked at the main screen, where a nature documentary was playing. Baby penguins were sliding down ice slopes while their parents watched protectively. "Sir, I believe these are simply cute animals. They appear to be showing us something they find interesting or beautiful. But why would they show us this during a military confrontation?" Kraxon asked, genuinely puzzled. "Perhaps," Zixara said carefully, "because they do not see this as a military confrontation. Perhaps they see it as a chance to make new friends." The concept of making friends with potential enemies was so foreign to Zirathi culture that it took several minutes for Kraxon to understand what she meant. When he finally grasped the idea, it hit him like a revelation. Meanwhile, on the lower decks of the Zirathi ships, something even more revolutionary was happening. Engineer Lisa Murphy had been broadcasting human snacks and trade goods to any Zirathi who expressed interest in cultural exchange. Several curious Zirathi engineers had approached the Liberty Bell under a flag of truce, and Murphy had welcomed them aboard. "Try this," Murphy said, offering a chocolate chip cookie to a nervous Zirathi engineer named Kethar. "It's one of our most popular foods." Kethar looked at the small brown disc with suspicion. "Is this a weapon?" "Only if you eat too many," Murphy laughed. "It's made with sugar and chocolate. Both are natural substances that humans find pleasant." Kethar carefully took a bite, and his eyes widened in amazement. The combination of sweet flavors was unlike anything in Zirathi cuisine. "This is ... incredible. How do you make these?" "I'll teach you," Murphy said, pulling out her tablet. "But first, try this." She handed him a can of energy drink. The caffeine hit Kethar's system like a bolt of lightning. Suddenly, he felt more alert and energetic than he had in years. "What is this substance? It makes me feel powerful, but also happy. It's just caffeine and sugar," Murphy explained. "Humans use it to stay awake and focused. We drink it when we're working on difficult problems or when we need extra energy." Within hours, word had spread throughout the Zirathi fleet about the amazing human food. Soldiers began abandoning their posts to request round discs of joy and liquid energy. The rigid military discipline that had held the Zirathi Empire together for centuries started to crumble as troops discovered that there were more interesting things to do than prepare for war. Captain Rodriguez watched the chaos with growing concern. "Dr. Torres, what exactly is happening over there?" "I think we're accidentally causing a cultural revolution," Torres replied, studying the readings from the Zirathi ships. "Their stress levels are dropping, their brain chemistry is stabilizing, and they're experiencing emotions they've probably never felt before. Joy, curiosity, wonder, these are new concepts for them." "Is that good or bad?" Rodriguez asked. "I honestly don't know," Torres admitted, "but it's definitely working better than fighting would have." The situation reached a critical point when Captain Rodriguez, frustrated by the ongoing chaos and confused by the Zirathi's contradictory messages, decided to address the entire fleet directly. She asked Lieutenant Johnson to open a channel to all Zirathi ships. "This is Captain Amy Rodriguez of the human vessel Liberty Bell," she began, her voice carrying the tone of someone who had dealt with too many bureaucratic complications. "I need to be honest with everyone here. We came here to negotiate, not to fight. We brought music and food and educational materials, because that's what humans do when we meet new people. We try to share things we think are interesting or beautiful." She paused, looking around at her crew, who were all listening intently. "I don't understand why everyone is so confused about this. We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're not trying to trick anyone. We just want to figure out what the problem is and find a way to solve it that doesn't involve anyone getting hurt." The translation systems on the Zirathi ships struggled with Rodriguez's casual, honest tone. Most military communications were formal and aggressive. This was something completely different. A leader speaking to other leaders as equals, without threats or demands. "If you want to fight," Rodriguez continued, "then I guess we'll have to figure out how to defend ourselves. But honestly, wouldn't it be easier if we all just talked about what we really want and tried to work something out? I mean, this whole situation seems pretty ridiculous when you think about it." The last sentence hit the Zirathi fleet like a thunderbolt. The word ridiculous translated into their language as lacking in honor or logic, for warriors who had spent their entire lives believing that conquest was the highest form of achievement. Hearing their sacred mission described as ridiculous forced them to examine their beliefs in a completely new way. On ship after ship, Zirathi soldiers began to question their orders. If their mission was ridiculous, why were they following it? If humans could offer friendship and interesting food instead of violence, why hadn't anyone ever offered them the same choice? Commander Zixara was the first to speak up. "War leader Kraxon," she said, "I request permission to negotiate with the humans." Kraxon looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. For the first time in his military career, he saw doubt in their eyes. Not doubt about their ability to fight, but doubt about whether fighting was the right thing to do. "Permission granted," he said quietly, "but I want to come with you. I think it's time we learned what these humans really want." The revolution that would transform the galaxy had begun, started by nothing more than cookies, music, and one exasperated human captain who thought the whole situation was getting out of hand. The meeting between Captain Rodriguez and war leader Kraxon took place in the Liberty Bell's main conference room, which had been hastily rearranged to accommodate the large Zirathi leader. Kraxon had to duck through the doorway, and his 4 arms made sitting in human-designed chairs nearly impossible. "Would you like some coffee?" Captain Rodriguez asked, as if she were greeting a neighbor instead of the leader of a galactic military empire. "Or we have tea, juice, or water. Dr. Torres also made some cookies this morning." Kraxon looked at the offered refreshments with curiosity. After witnessing the effect of human food on his troops, he was both wary and intrigued. "I will try." "The coffee," he said carefully, as Captain Rodriguez poured the coffee. She noticed that Kraxon's aggressive posture was slowly relaxing. The whale songs that Dr. Torres was still broadcasting seemed to be having a calming effect on the Zirathi leader, just as they had on his troops. "So," Rodriguez said, settling into her chair with her own cup of coffee, "what do you actually want from those 12 worlds? I mean, what do you really need that you can't get through trade or cooperation?" The question caught Kraxon off guard. In thousands of years of Zirathi military campaigns, no one had ever asked what they actually needed. The concept of examining their motivations was completely foreign to him. We require tribute," he said, repeating the standard Zirathi position. "Resources, technology, workers. It is the way of strength." "But why?" Rodriguez pressed gently. What are you going to do with all those resources? What's the end goal here? Kraxon opened his mouth to give another standard military response, then stopped. For the first time in his life, he actually thought about the question. We have always taken what we need. It is what the strong do to the weak. But what if the weak could give you what you need willingly? Rodriguez asked. What if, instead of taking things by force, you could get them through trade? Everyone wins that way. Commander Zixara, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. Captain Rodriguez, our people have been warriors for so long that we have forgotten how to do anything else. We know how to fight, but we do not know how to build or create or grow things. Then learn, Rodriguez said simply. We can teach you. There are thousands of species in the galaxy who would be happy to share their knowledge if you asked nicely instead of threatening them. Over the next several hours, something remarkable happened. The Zirathi leadership began to understand that their centuries of military conquest had been driven not by necessity, but by habit. They had been fighting because fighting was all they knew how to do. Dr. Torres joined the conversation, bringing charts and data about Zirathi biology. Your brain chemistry has been altered by your military communication systems, he explained. You've been artificially aggressive for so long that peace feels wrong to you, but that can be fixed. You mean we can learn to be not angry? Zixara asked with wonder. More than that, Torres replied. You can learn to be curious, creative, even happy. These are natural emotions that your species has been suppressing for generations. While the leadership meeting continued, the effects of human influence were spreading throughout the Zirathi fleet. Engineer Lisa Murphy had taught several Zirathi engineers how to make cookies, and they were now attempting to share the recipe with their entire species. The results were disastrous from a military standpoint, but wonderful from a cultural one. Zirathi, soldiers who had spent years maintaining weapon systems, were now trying to figure out how to build ovens. Communications officers who had coordinated battle strategies were learning to play jazz music. Even the most hardened warriors were gathering around screens to watch nature documentaries and debate whether penguins were better than dolphins. Transformation reached its peak when Sergeant Walsh, inspired by the positive response to his accidental fireworks display, decided to put on a proper show. He launched a series of harmless but spectacular flares that created beautiful patterns in space, accompanied by a soundtrack of classical music that Dr. Torres had selected. As the Zirathi fleet watched the light show, something fundamental changed. In their collective consciousness, they realized that creating beauty was more satisfying than creating destruction. For the first time in their history, they wanted to make something instead of breaking it. War leader, came a voice over the intercom in the conference room. The fleet is requesting permission to learn more about human culture. Many of our soldiers are asking if they can visit the human ship. Kraxon looked at Captain Rodriguez with an expression that might have been embarrassment. Captain, I believe my empire is deserting me for your cookies and music. Rodriguez laughed. Is that a bad thing? I do not know, Kraxon admitted. But I think I would like to find out. The peaceful revolution spread beyond the Zirathi fleet. Word of the strange human methods traveled through subspace communications to other Zirathi worlds. Within days, Zirathi civilians who had never questioned their military government began to wonder if there might be alternatives to constant war. The 12 worlds that had been threatened with conquest suddenly found themselves receiving apologetic messages from Zirathi commanders asking if they would be interested in cultural exchange programs. The Galactic Council watched in amazement as their most feared enemy transformed into enthusiastic students of art, music, and cooking. Commander Zixara led the peaceful revolution within the Zirathi military. She convinced her fellow officers that cooperation was more efficient than conquest, and that happy soldiers were more effective than angry ones. Within a month, the Zirathi Empire had officially changed its name to the Zirathi Cooperative and had begun converting its war machines into exploration vessels and agricultural equipment. Dr. Torres established the first interspecies marine biology research station in the neutral zone between human and Zirathi space. His studies of communication patterns between different species became the foundation for a new field of science that helped dozens of cultures understand each other better. Engineer Lisa Murphy became the galaxy's first official cultural exchange specialist, traveling between worlds to teach aliens about human food, music, and art. Her cookbook, Cooking for Aliens, became a bestseller in 47 different star systems. The story reached its conclusion 6 months later when Jake Sullivan returned to the Galactic Council building on Zephyria. He walked through the same crystal dome where this adventure had begun, carrying samples of the new coffee blend that had become popular throughout. Zirathi Space. Council Speaker Veltar greeted him with what could only be described as amazement. Commander Sullivan, you have achieved something that we thought was impossible. The Zirathi Empire no longer exists as a military threat. How did humanity accomplish this? Jake looked genuinely confused. Accomplish what? Captain Rodriguez just went out there and talked to them. She shared some food, played some music, and treated them like normal people. That's what humans always do when we meet someone new. But you ended a war without fighting, Veltar insisted. You transformed the galaxy's most aggressive species into peaceful explorers and artists. This is the greatest military victory in galactic history. I wouldn't call it a military victory, Jake said with a shrug. More like making new friends who turned out to be pretty nice once they calmed down a bit. Ambassador Nixara joined the conversation, her silver skin glowing with excitement. Commander, your species has revolutionized our understanding of conflict resolution. The Zirathi are now requesting to join the Galactic Council as peaceful members. 3 other aggressive species have asked if humans could help them resolve their conflicts as well. Jake set down his bag of coffee samples and looked around the council chamber. So let me understand this. We were supposed to stop a war, and instead we accidentally started a peace movement? Exactly, Veltar said. And that is why we are issuing a formal decree. Humanity will be designated as the galaxy's official peacekeeping force. Not because you are the strongest or most strategic, but because you are the only species capable of ending wars by making everyone too confused, entertained, or well-fed to fight. The decree was signed by representatives of all 47 member species. It officially recognized humanity as the galaxy's first choice for handling conflicts. That couldn't be solved through traditional diplomacy. The reasoning was simple. Humans approached every problem with the assumption that it could be solved through friendship, curiosity, and shared meals. Captain Rodriguez was promoted to Admiral and given command of the newly formed Diplomatic Solutions Fleet, which consisted of ships equipped with kitchens, music systems, and libraries rather than weapons. Her motto became, "Why fight when you can have lunch together?" Sergeant Walsh was transferred to the new Cultural Display Course, where his talent for creating beautiful explosions was used to design celebration fireworks for peace treaties and diplomatic festivals. He never did understand why his accidental asteroid show had impressed the Zirathi so much. War Leader Kraxon, now calling himself Cultural Exchange Leader Kraxon, established the first Zirathi art colony on a peaceful world near the Galactic Center. His paintings of human Zirathi friendship ceremonies became famous throughout the galaxy, though most humans thought they looked a bit